Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
With an investment of over $734,000, we're growing the specialized unit's capacity from 2 officers to a team of 8 officers.
Amid a double-digit rise in hate crimes, BC unveils new funding to improve policing. Will it make a difference? Plus,
had a total of 6 fire fatalities directly related to the use of lockable butane torches.
clamping down. Vancouver fire crews up inspections, saying butane torches continue to pose problems despite a citywide ban. Also,
these incidents of sort of where pedestrians or cyclists meet fast-moving cars has had I've seen profound impacts.
pumping the brakes. Why a Vancouver councillor says the city should consider lower speed limits on residential side streets.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Vancouver fire crews are cracking down on businesses selling lockable butane torches. Last week, enforcement officers found dozens of stores selling the lighters despite a city bylaw banning them. As John Hernandez reports, the tiny tools have caused thousands of fires in recent years, some of them deadly.
I'm walking toward Main Street in Vancouver, looking to see if I can find a lockable butane lighter. The city of Vancouver banned the sale of these lighters last year due to safety concerns, but recently fire officials have come out saying they're worried the lighters are still widely available. Fire officials say the lighters, which can continuously expel flames, are often used to consume drugs, and that they've caused thousands of fires in the city, which have killed 6 people. Last year, the city imposed a retail ban.
These devices are a deadly risk to people at the best of times, and when people are impaired through drug use or alcohol use, the devices get exponentially more risky. So we're doing everything we can to get these off the streets.
But a quick walk down Main Street will show these torches aren't hard to find. The first store I walked into had an entire rack of them. As you can see, not hard to turn on. Resembles a full-on blowtorch. Enforcement officers found the same thing. Mulcahy and his team visited over 160 stores last week. Half of them were still selling the lighters.
In our view, they're targeting opiate users and directing vulnerable people to use these very dangerous devices.
In June, a lockable lighter caused a fire in this Granville Street SRO, displacing dozens of residents.
You can go to almost any store and buy any variety store or any corner store and buy a torch.
Drought is frustrated by the repeat fires, but says it's a symptom of a bigger problem.
A lot of the people that stay in SROs, not all, have a drug or mental health problems. And they're not being given the facilities or the mechanisms to get out of their rut.
Fire officials have issued fines to just 2 businesses still selling them, but say more are on the way. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Amid a significant rise in hate crimes, BC has rolled out a plan to tackle the problem and improve public safety. Sarab Sandhu reports.
5 additional police officers and 1 intelligence analyst will join the BC RCMP's hate crimes unit to deal with a rise of hate crimes across the province.
Demand for expertise offered by the BC hate crime team has been growing, with hate-related incidents here in our province often being fueled by conflict and unrest in other parts of the world.
Provincial data shows police reported hate crimes in BC rose by 23% between 2022 and 2023. Hate crimes motivated by race or ethnicity increased by 12%, while those linked to religion spiked by more than 50%, and incidents related to sexual orientation were up by 43%.
Over the past year alone, we have seen reprehensible acts of violence here in our province. Places of worship have been vandalized, treaty offices have been defaced, and innocent people have been targeted while going about their daily activities.
Begg says BC is the only province in the country with a policing unit dedicated to addressing hate crimes. The RCMP says the team is currently reviewing more than 100 files per week where hate could be a motivating factor.
We have been hearing hurtful stories that shouldn't be happening.
No one should ever be targeted because of who they are, who they love, how they pray, or the color of their skin.
The latest funding is part of a larger $230 million investment into provincial policing.
Going from 2 officers to now 7 with an analyst allows us to be exponentially more proactive in researching files, in doing community outreach, hosting forums, doing education training for law enforcement.
In addition to expanding the team, the province says it has received $4 million from the federal government for a program aimed at preventing radicalized violence by supporting people at risk. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's a summer tradition for many in Vancouver, a swim under blue skies at Kids Pool. But some residents say the city's online reservation system is shutting people out. Maurice Katz reports.
Should you have to make a reservation to go swimming at a public pool? That's what we asked folks right here at Kids Pool.
For me, I like it because it keeps they lower the capacity.
It's very complicated. It's not designed for something simple like this.
It's like working again. Like this. It's, you know, for us people who worked our entire life, you have to remember to book a pool session.
I'm waiting in 6 minutes. I have to book for Monday. Yes, it's a hassle. Yes, you have to go to Show Pass, but everything's online now.
Does anyone have any thoughts about the reservation system? Strong opinions were easy to find, and there was no consensus on what is the better system.
And so if you go by Kids Pool, at most given times, it's either half empty or worse. Right now, it's basically like booking a rock concert. It's ridiculous.
Former City Councillor George Affleck says the system, first launched during COVID, has outstayed its welcome.
It's bureaucracy on steroids. It's brutal.
But Vancouver Park Board Commissioner Tom Digby says the system is working and is necessary.
The thing that we're not getting at Kids Pool is the 2-hour lineups. That, you know, when my kids are older as well, and back in the old day, we used to stand there in the hot baking sun for 2 hours trying to get into the kids' pool. And you don't see that anymore.
Right now, 80% of slots are booked online, while only 20% are left for walk-ins. Critics say that doesn't leave much room for spontaneity, while proponents say it's the only way families outside the area could feasibly use the pool.
I have friends who have young kids. They don't bother anymore.
A parent in Champlain Heights or something, you want to use the kids' pool, you've got a couple of kids for a day, you could not possibly do it without having this online booking system.
The problem? There just isn't enough data to prove whether which system is the best.
Show me the survey. Show me the survey, the actual survey, not a sense of feeling. I want to know where people stand on this, and let's get some real data.
Responding to that same question,
I'm on it, Gloria.
This debate also comes as the city launches public consultations on the future of the much-loved pool. Digby sees this conversation as an opportunity to push for a new pool.
A bit of an issue about rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The major issue is we need a new Kitsilano pool.
Those consultations continue through the weekend right here. As for whether the reservation system stays or goes, that may depend on what the numbers show. Maurice Katz, CBC News, Vancouver.
Vancouver City Council will consider a motion next week that recommends speed limits on side streets drop to 30 kilometers an hour. In BC, the default speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour, but some think that is too fast for streets that don't have painted center lines and are in residential areas. A staff report that will be presented at Council says this change will significantly reduce pedestrian collisions and fatalities. Green Councillor Pete Fry says he's been campaigning for this idea since he got elected in 2018.
You know, these incidents of sort of where pedestrians or cyclists meet fast-moving cars has had I've seen profound impacts. I myself was hit by a drunk driver and didn't walk for close to a year after my leg was shattered below the kneecap.
The staff report recommends the changes happen gradually over 3 years and estimates the price of installing 2 new speed limit signs per block across 25 neighborhoods in Vancouver will cost about $14 million. 2 people have been taken to hospital after an alleged hit and run and assault in Kelowna. It happened just before 1 this afternoon in a parking lot near Enterprise Way and Spall Road. RCMP have not commented on the nature of the attack, but CBC News spoke to a witness who says he saw a woman lying on the ground as people came to her aid. He also says he saw a man fleeing the area in a vehicle towards Glenmore Road. A suspect was eventually arrested in Lake Country. Paramedics transported 2 people to hospital, 1 in critical condition and the other in serious condition. BC wildfire officials in Lytton anticipate warmer and drier conditions in the interior, which could fuel the growing wildfire burning north of the village. The Eisman Creek wildfire has grown to 155 hectares since it ignited on Tuesday. RCMP have admitted it was started accidentally after a wheel flew off a trailer police were transporting, causing sparks to fly. Highway 12 between Lytton and Lillooet is open only to local traffic. Meanwhile, in Hope, where an out-of-control fire was burning near the popular Serpent's Back hiking trail, a 27-year-old man stranded on the side of a cliff was rescued by helicopter and then taken into custody on multiple outstanding warrants, according to RCMP. The blaze has since been classified as being held. There are about 80 active fires burning in BC, and 4 of them started in the last 24 hours. Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at that fire danger. Darius?
Right, so a bit of improvement in some places in the central interior and the north, where we did see a fair amount of precipitation move through. One of the things I will highlight is this is the first major drop in fire danger we've seen up in the far, far northeast around Fort Nelson in a very long time. Still a little pocket of high to extreme, but with that being said, the very significant amount of rain that came there clearly helping with the fire danger. Remains to be seen whether it'll make a difference in the drought, because it's not that consistent rainfall we look for to help with drought. Some lightning strikes happening up in the north, but other than that, things are fairly calm. We'll talk more about the weather coming up later in the show.
All right, thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
Today marks the 100th birthday of the Cranbrook Public Library. What started as a small room above the post office has turned into something much more. Corey Bullock reports.
If the walls of the Cranbrook Library could talk, there'd be 100 years worth of stories as the public institution celebrates its centennial.
Honestly, it's kind of surreal. It's really an honor.
Briegel herself has a storied history at the library. She first started as a page when she was 18 before getting her degrees and returning as chief librarian in the early 90s. And she says while things like technology have certainly changed over that time.
But then I stop and I think about it, and it's just like, well, we still have books, right?
Because at its core, that's what the library has always been about. Even 100 years ago, when the near 4,000 citizens of Cranbrook decided a library was vital for the community, lobbying the province to make it happen.
There's a tobacco store, and upstairs the province put sort of the first provincial library in Cranbrook there of 100 books. All the books were quickly stolen.
Selby says just 1 book was returned. So, in 1924, a group of concerned citizens formed what they called the Library Association, raising enough funds to officially open a public library on July 4th, 1925. They had 95 members and a few hundred books. Compared to today, hundreds of resources and nearly 10,000 members.
The citizens of Cranbrook and the city councils here have thought, you know, reading and access is so important to people here, and it can't be based on anyone's income. We need a free access for everybody. And to have that go for 100 years is really something special.
And he's not the only one who thinks so. Over the past few months, tributes have been pouring in from authors, musicians, and other well-known people from across the world.
Congratulations to the Cranbrook Public Library on your 100th birthday.
Congratulations to you all on this wonderful achievement.
Just one of 100 reasons to celebrate. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
As the country celebrates 249 years of independence, some Americans marked the day on this side of the border. How they feel about U.S. Canada relations. That's next. Our American neighbors are celebrating Independence Day today. It comes at a time when U.S. Canada relations are tense. And as Pinky Wong reports, one expert says the atmosphere has changed on both sides of the border.
The 4th of July this year marks the United States' 249th birthday. Here at Canada Place, visitors have arrived from an Alaska cruise. Let's see how the Americans among them are feeling about the day.
The main reason that I'm actually even wearing any apparel is just that I'm so grateful to live in the States, and I feel so lucky, and it's not a political statement.
A little awkward celebrating in another country.
I'm real happy. 249 years, it's a great thing. Next year is going to be 250. That's going to be even better.
An expert in U.S. Canada relations says the Independence Day atmosphere this year is a little different.
Happy 4th!
4th of July, a lot of people tend to be patriotic, there's fireworks, etc. But I think a lot of people are disappointed with what's going on in Congress, especially with the bill that just passed. And it's going to impact a lot of Californians negatively. I walk around my neighborhood and I'm not seeing the flags.
She says more Americans are paying attention to what's happening here in Canada.
It was very interesting to see on my social media how many Americans were actually paying attention to Canada Day. Canada Day! And that they were interested in, knowing more about it.
We just hope that the two governments can get together and work out whatever they got to work out, because Canada and the U.S. have been living together for 200 years. I'd like to see that continue.
Pinky Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
In Ottawa, a more muted celebration to mark the 4th of July amid a trade war started by the U.S. president. Rafi Boudjikanian with the U.S. ambassador's take on negotiations as a key deadline approaches.
The 4th of July party at the U.S. ambassador's residence, an annual tradition for Ottawa diplomats during an untraditional year.
We have a great relationship with Canada, okay? Well, sure, there's always what I call pebbles in the shoe. It's not always perfect.
But Donald Trump's trade war has been anything but a minor irritant. He's threatened this country's sovereignty, hit Canada with steep tariffs, including on steel and aluminum, and attacked the digital services tax, which would have cost American tech giants billions in levies to Ottawa. Canada scrapped it to keep trade talks going.
It's part of a bigger negotiation. It's something that we expected in the broader sense that would be part of a final deal.
Another Trump target, Canada's protection for supply-managed sectors like dairy, something Ottawa is not budging on.
They can put off supply management and some of the other issues into the future.
This trade lawyer says he thinks Canada and the U.S. could reach an agreement by the Prime Minister's July 21st deadline.
If there is a deal, it will track pretty much what we've seen from the other countries that have done them, and be some sort of agreement of Canada to have some sort of minimum tariff. I think that's a minimum request. I don't see Trump compromising on that.
The U.S. ambassador also expects a deal can be reached.
I think it's realistic to work towards having a framework agreement by July 21st that outlines the parameters that then need to be filled in more detail. But directionally and knowing where we're going, absolutely.
Earlier this week, Prime Minister Carney said talks are going well, but said he won't sign a deal that's not the best he can get. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
This nest may be empty, but it wasn't stopping this beautiful bird from hanging out on a sunny day in West Vancouver. Warm, but by no means hot on the coast today. Your full provincial forecast with Darius Madavi is coming up.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
Lower Mainland realtors are reporting a surge in office real estate sales, up more than 30% in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the same time period last year. Greater Vancouver Realtors says there were 93 office sales in the Lower Mainland in Q1 compared to 71 sales in Q1 of 2024. The group says those sales amounted to $269 million. Commercial land transactions, by comparison, saw a roughly 50% decrease in the same time period, with just 53 sales in the first quarter. Home sales in some major Canadian markets are slumping. New numbers show Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary have all seen dips, but bidding wars seemingly a thing of the past. Scott Peterson has more on the downward trend.
At the beginning of the year, real estate boards across Canada thought the housing market was poised to bounce back. Interest rates were coming down. Prices had flattened out, and it was shaping up to be a buyer's market. But then talk of the tariffs hit from Canada's largest trading partner. That pretty much upended home sales in cities across the country, along with rising glut now of unsold homes. Starting with fresh prices from the Toronto real estate market this morning, home sales in June down about 2.5% from last year to just over 6,200 homes being sold. Prices also down 5.5%. The average price in Toronto now is about $1.1 million, and that's with all types of homes rolled in there, condos, semis, and detached. Now, what is spiking up is inventory. The total number of active listings of unsold homes is up 31% over last year to just over 31,000 properties. Vancouver, same story. Sales down close to 10% from last year. Prices fell almost 3% to $1.17 million, and another 24% spike in inventory to about 17,500 unsold homes. Once hot Calgary, same story. Home sales there down 16.5%. Prices down about 3.5% to just over 586,000. And again, total unsold listings up 83% to just over 6,900 unsold homes on the market. Now, the real estate boards from all three cities are pointing out that lower interest rates are good for buyers, but the tariff uncertainty created by Canada's largest trading partner is keeping buyers at a distance. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
This year's Calgary Stampede has officially opened. Organizers are hoping for another year of record-setting attendance. And as the CBC's Paula Duhotchek reports, even amid a trade war, fairgoers are ready to spend.
Open it up! And just like that, another Stampede is off to the races.
I am so excited to be here.
It's going to be an incredible experience for me, for being a maritimer.
Super excited. I have all my Stampede fits planned.
The Calgary Stampede is known as the greatest outdoor show on earth, but it's also considered an economic bellwether for Alberta.
I think it reflects current conditions, how people are feeling about the state of the economy, the state of the energy sector, but also a little bit forward-looking as well.
Even amid a trade war, there's plenty of excitement in the city. This Stampede comes amid talk from politicians of Canada becoming an energy superpower, and after years of inflation, prices have started to even out.
To me, this all supports more optimism, cautious optimism, around Stampede time.
Last year, the Stampede set a record with more than 1.4 million visitors, and this year, organizers are expecting even more.
There's a lot of people that are staying closer to home this year, and this is one of the biggest events in Canada. I think it's on a lot of people's bucket lists to come and check out.
Clean today.
We've got a lot of premium suites that we sell in the GMC Stadium for the rodeo and the chucks, and those are all sold out.
Visitors say their wallets are open. Do you have a budget for Stampede?
Heck no. Spend all of it.
And there are plenty of opportunities to spend money.
The sweet tea with boba
came to $35, I think, for 3 of them. Yes.
How much for the fries?
I think $16. Yes.
Bought 2 pairs. This one and a pair of these.
How much did that set you back?
200.
The Stampede says the economic impact of the next 10 days is around $282 million. But at the end of the day, you can't put a price on a good time.
Yahoo! Yahoo!
Yahoo! Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
The Trump administration says it will begin to send out letters to countries with details of higher U.S. tariff rates that will go into effect August 1st. Canada is exempt from the so-called Liberation Day tariffs, and trade talks between the two countries have now resumed after Trump abruptly terminated them last week.
You've got two tough negotiators here. You've got the Prime Minister and you've got the President of the United States, and neither one of them is going to walk away when we get an agreement thinking that they got a lousy deal. They're both going to say there's wins in here for Canada, there's wins in here for the United States. It's a good deal for both of us.
Trump agreed to resume trade negotiations with Canada after the federal government scrapped the digital sales tax targeting large U.S. technology firms. Both countries are aiming for a deal by July 21st. This year's 4th of July celebrations in the U.S. come as President Donald Trump continues to insist his country should annex Canada. The CBC's Thomas Daigle traveled to one border city and found Americans pushing back on their president's rhetoric and hoping Canadian tourists and shoppers will soon return.
Steering through both U.S. and Canadian waters, this Buffalo, New York tour boat shows visitors how the city's intertwined with its neighbor, Ontario.
We consider ourselves almost Canadian because when I travel, they say, where are you from? Buffalo, New York. Oh, by Manhattan? Like, no, we're pretty much Canada.
Buffalo Harbor Cruises is giving Canadians 30% off all summer. So is the Buffalo Bison's baseball team. All in a region where Canadians were known in the past to spend more than $2 billion US a year.
Up to 40% of tourists here typically come from the Greater Toronto area. Now local businesses are trying to lure back visitors upset about the U.S. president's rhetoric about Canada.
U.S. border data shows a 24% drop year over year in travelers crossing into Western New York.
I think it's really insulting that our president even suggests that you would be a state.
Usually there's oodles and boodles of folks coming. I haven't seen it.
The tourism office is even paying for this billboard ad, telling drivers in Toronto, Buffalo loves Canada. A long-running campaign they pulled back from in the winter when Donald Trump threatened punishing tariffs.
What were the messages you were getting back in February?
Yeah, it was very negative. And so it was, you know, Canadians are very kind at the same time, but it's like, we love you, Buffalo, but we'll see you in 4 years after the Trump administration is over with.
Border crossings here never fully recovered since COVID hit. A sustained drop especially felt now, even at this children's museum.
The traffic's not there. It is really tough and difficult to kind of see just kind of what the relationship is right now.
The city's banking on Canadians returning someday, whether for a boat tour or just a visit. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Buffalo, New York.
Now to the war in Ukraine, where Russia is escalating its long-range attacks. Overnight, Kiev was hit by more than 500 drones and nearly a dozen missiles. All of this as the Russian president is showing little, if any, interest in a ceasefire. Chris Brown reports.
Kyiv suffered for 8 hours, the largest Russian attack in more than 3 years of war, involving 500 drones. And when they hit, even underground bunkers don't feel safe. Tatiana Zarunda said something was flying every minute. The attack drones descended, and then bang. Cynically timed for U.S. Independence Day, the attack came right after Donald Trump got off the phone with Russia's leader.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with the conversation I had today with President Putin.
Putin feels that, he has all the chances of achieving his goals.
The message from Vladimir Putin is unmissable, says this Ukrainian defense expert.
But Putin showed that he has no intention of any ceasefire, let alone lasting peace with Ukraine.
Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky and Trump had their own phone call. We agreed to have a meeting between our teams to increase the strength of our air defenses, he said. Ukraine was already desperately short of interceptors, such as Patriot missiles, when word came this week that Trump was holding back some shipments. With weaker defenses on the ground, Ukraine's revered F-16 pilots have been forced to take even bigger risks in the skies. Any mission is a risk, but using your cannon is a triple risk, said the commanding officer of Maxim Ustmenko, who was killed shooting down Russian projectiles. Such mass drone attacks by Russia aren't just about hitting military targets. They're also about trying to break Ukraine's will to fight. Germany has said it will also look at trying to buy more Patriot missiles for Ukraine from the United States. And next week, France's Emmanuel Macron and Britain's Keir Starmer will co-chair a summit aimed at putting more pressure on Vladimir Putin. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Hamas has submitted its response to the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal. It's describing that response as positive and says it is ready to start negotiations on how to implement the plan. Still, there is no deal yet and no end to Israel's offensive. Tom Perry reports.
In Gaza, the grieving is endless. At Nasser Hospital in Han Yunis, the victims of yet another Israeli strike laid out in white shrouds. Overhead, an Israeli helicopter. In this place, talk of a ceasefire is often met with a tortured skepticism. There's no optimism, that's over, says Mohammed Shabat. Now it's all about counting your days alive. I expect Israel will occupy Gaza, says Ihab Bakrun. More people will die and more people will leave.
One beautiful hostage deal.
On the other side of this war, families of Israeli hostages continue to demand a ceasefire and the return of their loved ones, rallying on U.S. Independence Day outside the American consulate in Tel Aviv.
We want a deal. We want a deal for everybody.
Ruby Ren's son, Itai, an Israeli-American and soldier in the IDF, was taken on October 7th.
The IDF about a year ago told us that most likely he did not survive, but the Hamas have not provided any A, acknowledgement that he is in that position, and B, what his physical status is.
Keith Siegel, another Israeli-American, was held captive for 484 days before being released in a ceasefire deal in February.
I experienced threats to my life, having weapons pointed at me and terrorists telling me that they were going to kill me.
Siegel was kidnapped along with his wife Aviva at their kibbutz, both now free, he says, though not entirely.
Until everybody is back, I think I can't feel free.
The ceasefire would reportedly include Hamas returning 10 living hostages and the remains of 18 deceased over the course of the 60-day truce. There's also a pledge to work toward a permanent end to the war. Hamas has reportedly handed over its response to mediators, with Reuters quoting a Palestinian official as saying it's positive and should help with a deal. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
A transit enthusiast from Boston is getting a first-hand look at Metro Vancouver's public transportation system. We'll take a ride on the C-Bus with him next. A popular Boston YouTuber fascinated by public transit recently trekked across Canada exclusively by bus. But now Miles Taylor is back in Metro Vancouver to check out the West Coast Express, the Expo line, and he took a ride on the C bus with our Shivani Joshi.
I'm here at Waterfront Station with Miles Taylor. He's the YouTuber behind Miles in Transit. He's traveled far and wide around the world across various forms of public transit. And today we're going to be taking the C bus. It's my first time, and it's one of the most unique forms of transit in Metro Vancouver. So let's go.
Look, it's neon. I cannot believe that. It's so cool.
What prompted you to start filming your journeys?
I started writing a blog when I was 13, where I was reviewing every bus route and train station in my home system in Boston, the MBTA. When I was writing, I was very analytical, and when I did videos, I could just be funny and have crazy editing and stuff. And so I just sort of transitioned to that. There's kind of two sides of me, and they're at odds with each other.
Okay.
There's what I call the foamer side, which is it's a term for people who get so excited by transit they foam at the mouth when they see it. Then you get the transit planning side. That's all about amenities and consistent service, and those sides are always at odds with each other. And a system that can do both is kind of a rare, impressive thing. The transit system in Budapest is amazing. At least from when I visited 7 years ago, it's just got this huge variety of modes. There's buses and trolley buses and trams and the second oldest subway in the world, and it's just all very different, but there's just the sheer frequency of it, so many vehicles coming all the time and just so many people on them. It was just a really cool experience to ride all. You can basically get anywhere very easily. It's the biggest tram network in Europe. This is my favorite type of transit route, which is a route that's super short and super busy. It's nice that it's short because you can run super frequent service with not that many vehicles, and then it's super busy, so you're able to run it very frequently and actually fill the ferries up. And because it's so short, it's reliable. When you have length, you naturally will get later and later, but just going back and forth, there's not much room for error.
What's in the plan for this trip? What are you trying to do?
So I have a couple things in mind. I want to ride all of SkyTrain, just check off the system, see the whole thing. I just think it's the most novel, amazing system. I feel like pound for pound, it might be the best in North America. Just the sheer frequency you can get out of that is mind-blowing to me. Plus, it's got these cool elevated lines. On the Expo line, doing that curve after Science Center, coming toward downtown, it blows my mind every time. It's so cool. I want to ride West Coast Express, which is the commuter rail system here that gets far more riders than you would expect it to, given how little service it runs, which is kind of the power of, I like to say that Canadians use transit a lot more than people in the U.S. do, and I feel like that's really emblematic of the power of that.
Here we are, Lonsdale Quay. Let's get a ranking on the C bus.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but genuinely, I thought about it. I think it's a 10 out of 10 service. I'm serious. I don't give 10s very easily, but it's frequent, it's short, it's a ferry, it checks all the boxes. Who wouldn't want to commute on a boat? It's fun.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I wouldn't want to go into work after. I would be like, let's go to the beach.
Yeah.
Darius Madavi is back with a look at our weather. Darius?
Right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the drought situation just very quickly because, again, we saw that rain up in the northeast earlier this week. This came out yesterday, so we haven't seen the impact of that rain just yet, but hopefully we will see some improvement up here. But again, that was very intense rain, not like the consistent rainfall over about a week that the Peace got, so maybe not going to see the same improvements that we saw in that part of the northeast. But, fingers crossed still. We're seeing some more lightning up in the far northern parts of the province, and something I didn't mention earlier in the show, down here in the far southeast, we also have a few lightning strikes down in just that very bottom corner of the province with a little bit of rain coming up there as well. Besides that, the big thing that we're watching is, of course, those wind gusts this weekend as temperatures continue to climb, which I'll show you in a second. First, those wind gusts, as you can see, as we get into tonight, as we get into tomorrow, at times, some briefly gusty winds. Not looking, so far at least, like it's going to be as bad as it was a couple days ago for the most part, but there will be a couple stretches of a few hours where we do see some pretty strong winds gusting up to 40, 50 kilometers per hour through the weekend. So something to be watching when it comes to that Eisman Creek wildfire near Lytton. The winds across the rest of the province, nothing too crazy. Down on the Strait, of course, we might see some gusty winds at times, but for the most part, things seem fairly calm here on the coast and throughout much of southern BC, especially when it comes to a lack of precipitation, for one thing, and the temperatures, which are continuing to climb, but not seeing any major fluctuations. You can see that heat coming up to the south, easily reaching 30 degrees across much of the southern interior and parts of the southeast over the next few days. Temperatures expected to jump up even more as we get into early next week. Other than that, some precipitation headed up, mostly confined to the north and central coast. Once we get into next week, some of that may come to more northern sections of the island and the Sunshine Coast, but not likely to make it to the lower mainland, at least not yet. Some cloud will come here mid next week, but not likely to see that rain. Here are those temperatures that I was talking about coming up for the weekend and then staying high, a bit of a jump as we get into early next week, and those temperatures will likely stay through Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Conditions across the province tomorrow, a few thunderstorms still possible, especially for parts of the central interior. That's the main place to be watching. Smoke potentially making it down to the south coast as well. And here's our 5-day forecast. You know, we got mixed skies tomorrow, sunnier around midday, and then lots of sunshine beyond that.
All right, Darius. Well, don't go anywhere. Guess what? That's right. It's time for Fun Fact Friday. And Darius, you're going to tell us a little bit more about a star that exploded not once, but twice.
That's right. So let me take you into the stars because we're going far beyond our own galaxy. I'm going to take you out 160,000 light years away outside the Milky Way to the Large Magellanic Cloud, which is a small dwarf galaxy that actually orbits our galaxy, the Milky Way. Again, 160,000 light years away, which means as we zoom in here, anything that we see is going to have happened 160,000 years ago. That is how long it takes light to reach us. And what we are actually going to see here is specifically something that happened even 300 years before that. We're seeing the remnants of a double supernova. And let me show you what that looks like. You can see here as we continue to zoom in, I have another close-up of it here, or first an animation of it. You can see that first blast, and then 2 seconds later, a second blast. Now, these supernovas are usually for really massive stars, ones much, much larger than our sun. Those are usually what causes a supernova, but this one is a little bit different. It's type 1a supernova. You can see that double line here. This is a calcium image. You can see the calcium that came as a result of that nuclear explosion. This one in particular happens because of a white dwarf star, which you can see there. This is the dead husk of a small star, smaller star like our sun. And this one is in a special binary system with another star. It is sucking all that helium off, and as that helium builds around that white dwarf star, eventually it detonates in a nuclear explosion, causing that first massive blast, and then that blast causes a shockwave inside the core of the star, condensing it even more, which causes a second massive explosion, giving you this incredible image.
I love how excited you get over science. That's very cool. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you.
A giant flower is the new cool thing at a PEI school. It's 5 foot tall and covered in solar panels, powering classrooms and sparking conversations. More on that next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC inbox.
CBC's Musical Nooners free concert series returns. Every Wednesday at noon, enjoy an afternoon filled with tunes and talent. Details at cbc.ca/musicalnooners. And experience a weekend of culture and flavors of the world at the Surrey Fusion Festival, July 19th to 20th. With over 50 cultural pavilions, enjoy live music, entertainment, marketplace, and more. Festival info at surreyfusionfestival.ca.
A Charlottetown high school has an interesting looking flower on its front lawn these days.
It generates enough electricity to power 2 classrooms. Nancy Russell has more.
The smart flower has been turning a lot of heads since it arrived here on the front lawn of Colonel Gray High School. If you look closely, it's covered in solar panels, generating enough electricity to power 2 classrooms, but also powering a lot of curiosity.
Anytime you have new technology come into a school like this, there's always a little bit of excitement because nobody knows what it does or how it's going to work. So it really gives students an opportunity to be curious.
It's great to see a working model here. I can get my students down here to show how this works and take them to the lab and show them all the data analysis that's being done. It gives them a real feeling that it's not just something in the future, it's happening right now.
The smart flower was installed over the fall and winter at a cost of just over $300,000 and opens and closes along with the sun. It caught the eye of PEI's Environment Minister, who was visiting the plant in Ontario where the smart flower is manufactured. At that point, there was only one other installation at a school in Saskatoon.
Next year, in the program that I teach here, the students have to do work that is involved around environmental sustainability. Obviously, sustainability and solar power fits into that nicely.
The teachers say the smart flower can be connected to lots of subject areas, not just science and the environment, but also math, creative writing, and art. There's also a practical side, raising awareness about jobs in renewable energy.
We have great discussions in our classroom to talk about the different career opportunities regarding the solar panel production, the engineering behind it, the maintenance, the data analysis. There are so many jobs.
The teachers say there is also something unique about a solar installation shaped like a flower.
It really shows the connection with what I teach in biology. Our world runs on photosynthesis. Our world runs on the sun. So to see that it is an actual flower and it does operate that way, I mean, it's a simple way to make a connection with the curriculum.
School may be over for the summer, but the smart flower will keep doing its thing, a lesson in solar energy for everyone to see. Nancy Russell, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Imagine that, a flower that turns sunlight into energy. How did they ever think of that? Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. Have a great night.